Roughly 20 years ago, a landmark RPG changed the landscape of the gaming industry. The company then known as Squaresoft released Final Fantasy VII, which became a cultural phenomenon that pushed the boundaries of what video games could be, and helped to cement the Sony PlayStation as a major player in the home console market. Some of Final Fantasy VII's features, like its extensive use of full-motion video, were so unheard of for the time that Squaresoft actually marketed the game in North America as a major media blockbuster, on par with a motion picture.
A multi-million-dollar production, over 2 years in the making, and a cast of thousands. Final Fantasy VII.
As one of the most popular games of its time, it comes as no surprise that Final Fantasy VII holds many secrets and mysteries. In fact, one of the most popular video game myths of all time is a direct result of a pivotal scene that ranks as one of the most memorable moments in video games. Some of Final Fantasy VII's mysteries aren't as well known. Over the 20 years since its original release, countless tips, tricks, and secrets have emerged. Many are well documented and fully understood, while others have some loose ends to this day, as is the case with the subject of our episode, the mysterious Test Zero. Back in 1997, when Final Fantasy VII released in North America, there were 2 strategy guides published to help players get through the massive game. There was the official guide from Brady Games, which was sanctioned by Squaresoft, and then there was the completely unauthorized Final Fantasy VII Ultimate Guide, published by Versus Books. The guide from Versus Books was largely written by Casey Lowe, a veteran editor who started off a game fan and eventually wrote guides for Nintendo Power. The guide stood out not only for its flashy cover and custom artwork, but for an interesting tidbit tucked at the bottom of page 37. The page is dedicated to the Coral Prison part of the game, but there is also a lengthy section devoted to something called the mysterious Test Zero. According to the text, there is a well near the beginning of the Coral Prison zone. If you climb down to the bottom of the well, you have a chance of encountering a random enemy called Test Zero. The screenshots on the page reveal the fight to be against a pack of guardhounds in a forest setting that is wildly out of place for the desert surroundings of Coral Prison. The guide claims each of the 4 enemies has an insane amount of health, roughly 25,000 HP, though none of them will actually attack you. If your characters are around the normal level for Coral Prison, the fight will take a ridiculously long time to win, but slaying the foes will net you 4,000 experience points, 400 ability points, and 40,000 gil, making it well worth the time. If it all sounds too good to be true, that's probably because it is, according to the note at the bottom of the page. The extra text explains that by the time the guide was ready to publish, the Test Zero encounter was removed from the English PlayStation version of Final Fantasy VII. One other thing to consider about this fabled fight is that Lowe stated he wasn't sure whether or not Test Zero originated as a possible software test, likely for debugging purposes, or if it was an Easter egg left in by a programmer. The claim that the encounter is absent from all versions except the original Japanese release certainly piqued our interest. As we looked further into the Test Zero encounter, we eventually came across a video by YouTuber Garland the Great. Posted in 2009, the video noted he first heard about the Test Zero enemy from the Versus Books guide as well. Garland had been following the Test Zero mystery for some time, and once he was finally able to secure a copy of the original Japanese version of Final Fantasy VII, he made a video of his encounter with the enemy. In addition to publishing what's most likely the first video evidence of the fight, Garland also provided some updated information regarding the stats for the Test Zero enemy. In the Versus Book Guide, Lowe stated each enemy in the encounter had 25,000 HP, while in the Japanese version, they actually have 30,000 HP. The most important takeaway from the video and its description is that the Test Zero encounter is possible to replicate while playing a Japanese copy of Final Fantasy VII without external assistance. Previously, players would utilize GameShark codes to access the debug room, and the Test Zero encounter on various versions of Final Fantasy VII. But these enemies would take on a different appearance. Instead of the guardhounds, the enemies resemble the yellow pyramid effect that could be placed on party members by opponents in certain battles, such as the first fight with Reno. After viewing the video, the evidence seemed very convincing, but we wanted to see it firsthand to be sure. We reached out to Garland to get some assistance in tracking down the right version of Final Fantasy VII. According to Garland, the Test Zero encounter is exclusive to the first print run of the original Japanese release. First, we played through our original US PlayStation 1 copy of Final Fantasy VII, the PS4 re-release, and finally the Steam re-release to see if we could access the Test Zero encounter. After arriving in Coral Prison, climbing down to the bottom of the well, and triggering countless fights, we never saw the Test Zero fight. Next, we secured a Japanese PlayStation and a copy of the first print run of the Japanese version of Final Fantasy VII. After nearly an hour of random encounters at the bottom of the prison's well with no sign of the elusive fight, we started to get anxious. Our perseverance was finally rewarded as we, at long last, got our first glimpse of Test Zero. The 4 guard hounds in the square formation and the out-of-place forest environment were present and accounted for to our delight. Now that we had verified the claims were real, we wondered what the story was behind this fight. Why is it only present in the original Japanese version? Why was it removed from all subsequent releases? We tried to hit up our contacts at Square Enix, but they declined to comment on the story. Maybe one day we'll be able to interview Yoshinori Kitase, the director of Final Fantasy VII and the producer of the upcoming remake, to find out if he can shed some light on the mystery. However, Garland, Lowe, and several others believe the fight is merely part of the debug options used to test Final Fantasy VII during its development, and that Test Zero wasn't meant to be in the final version of the game. Much of the circumstantial evidence, like the ridiculous stats, the fact that they never attack, and the odd battle environment, points toward this conclusion. Then there is also the fact that there are numerous test enemies still in the game's code. When any of them is accessed on a version of Final Fantasy VII other than the original Japanese release, they appear as the pyramid effect. However, when accessing these enemies on the original Japanese version, each shares a model with an actual enemy you encounter in the game. You can get a first-hand glimpse of this when you fight a group of Test 2 enemies via the debug room in the Japanese version of Final Fantasy VII, or you can use a device like GameShark to access them. Besides Test Zero, you can still find the following test enemies in the game's code. Test 1 uses the Grunt enemy model. Test 2 uses the Dean Glow model. Test 4 uses the Hedgehog Pie model. Test 5 uses the Serpent model. Test 6 uses the Adamantii model. Test 7 uses the Gross Panzer Big model. Test 8 uses the Gross Panzer Small enemy model. And finally, Test 9 uses the Gross Panzer Mobile enemy model. Although the most rational theory is that Test Zero is merely a holdover from the development process, there is a more radical explanation tied to another oddity found in the game. At the bottom of the Coral Prison well is an open chest that is empty upon closer inspection. The contents of this chest are the subject of an unsolved mystery, but its location leads some to speculate it might have something to do with Test Zero. While nobody is sure what was in the chest, the question has led players to poking around in the game's code to see if they could uncover the answer. Instead, they were greeted by another mystery, the Red Doll. It's part of a hidden layer present in the game's code, but it is not viewable by any means while playing the game. Instead, it's hidden behind part of the empty chest and part of the pre-rendered image of the skeleton that some have argued resembles a guard hound. The hidden red doll, the strange empty chest, the Test Zero encounter involving guard hounds, and the skeleton that resembles them. When you consider that all of these elements are found in the same place, you might be able to see why some suggest they're all related. The theory proposes that there was a side quest in which the Red Doll served as an NPC who would challenge your party to a series of battles in a sort of test, hence the enemy names Test Zero and so on. If you won all the fights, you would be rewarded with the item that was originally in the open chest. However, due to time restrictions, the developers weren't able to complete the side quest and tried to scrub it from the game at the last minute. It's a novel theory that would be amazing if true, but without any of the Final Fantasy VII development team willing to go on record, we'll likely never know if there's anything to it. The evidence strongly points toward Test Zero being merely an element of the game's test features during development, and any connection it may have to other mysterious elements like the Red Doll and the open chest are purely circumstantial. We're not ready to close the file on this one just yet, but until we get some sort of statement from Square Enix, this is sadly where the trail goes cold.